This is actually going to be a sequel to the previous session that we co-hosted. So myself, Alex Higgs, I'm a product manager, principal engineer, kind of all-round technical person at Business Thinking. We're the creators of AutomateDV. And over to you, Jonas, to do a quick introduction.
My name is Jonas. I work for VaultSpeed. I do solution engineering, and I've done quite a few other things before that at VaultSpeed. So happy to be here and happy to talk about yet a few more new developments on the collab we have set up between VaultSpeed and AutomateDV over the last, year or so? I don't remember.
Yeah. It's been a good amount of time. It's been great working together. Yeah. Last time we showed how AutomateDV now integrates with VaultSpeed. There's an API that we built. It's supporting VaultSpeed is now supporting the build of AutomateDV projects using metadata and modeling defined centrally as a source of truth in VaultSpeed. And what you're going to see today is how that's all evolved really very quickly, and what clients are actually doing now and how they're using it day to day. So this is going to be the agenda. We're going to go over what happens now with scaling, now that we've solved the build, why metadata management and governance around that becomes the bottleneck, how the two can work together to solve those problems. So we're going to have a really interesting demo, really exciting demo from Jonas, going to show how this works on the VaultSpeed side, and then we'll be taking questions at the end. You've automated the build. Now what? Essentially is the question. We spoke about, as I say, we spoke about automating the build of an AutomateDV project, VaultSpeed being the central location now. This is a really great starting point, but now that portion's automated, your team can do more faster, and that kind of creates it's kind of new problems because there's a lot more volume, there's a lot more things to manage. Your team may be able to grow, to be able to do more, and that opens the door for standards, ways of working, to kind of start running away from you as things scale, you and your team. So that new capability of rapid change, out as a result of solving that the build problem and the metadata problem, can then, like I say, create this kind of governance at scale problem. It becomes the new beast to tackle, the governance at scale. And that's where we kind of want to be able to still do things fast, but also correctly, consistency, and without losing track of what's changed. Because those are things that are going to start becoming more painful as things grow, as you're able to do more. As soon as you have more things to track, the human mind can only track so much. So the tools that we have need to be able to start taking that away from the mental load as well. So this is where we have two different teams. Now, just small history lesson. I think I touched on this before for those of you who weren't in the previous session. AutomateDV was built back in 2009, actually, to rapidly build data vault projects, help businesses assess whether data vault could solve their problems. And then from there, lots of teams took it into production kind of straight away. They're like, yeah, this is great, let's go ahead with it. So what's changed is how much effort the building of the vault takes. That's dropped significantly. It's pretty much a solved problem. AutomateDV, VaultSpeed. There's a big kind of industry and tool landscape around it now. But that's allowed us to kind of shift the focus and start solving the next problem, which is governance, and that's kind of a problem in the industry as a whole, especially with the advent of AI. It's governance, or wherever you look. It's something that's always been there. It's not suddenly something new, but I think as the tooling is allowing us to build things and solving the build problem, it's no longer we can no longer neglect it, because it's the thing that's kind of been in the background and is now going, I'm still a thing here, and I'm more of a thing that needs to be solved than ever. It was, I think, previously considered too hard, too low of a priority, because teams were previously focused on just getting things delivered, getting things working into the hands of the business. But now governance is the next thing that we can solve, because we have created the room to solve it by solving build pretty much permanently. So I think that there's these two teams. There's the experimenters who are still in that pilot stage, and the scale ready teams who have gone through that pilot stage and really now want to get it into production. Ultimately, governance is still sitting behind those two teams, even though they're at different stages in their data journey. They would have the same underlying problem. Metadata and governance haven't kept pace with how much easier it is to have to build. So that's the thing that can now be solved. And I think at that point it would be good to segue into how VaultSpeed can solve that. So over to you, Jonas.
The intro of Alex was pretty clear. When you're building platforms like this, data platforms using Data Vault, AutomateDV, whatever type of way you're using to solve the code generation, what starts piling up, of course, is indeed how do I start maintaining this entire code base? And that's exactly what VaultSpeed has always. We've always had a proposition to solve that, right? Especially around Data Vault. How do you manage different versions of source systems? How do you manage different versions of the vault, of the subsequent vault model that you create upon those? And how do you do that consistently over time? As part of that, we had a solution, SaaS solution, point and click interface as to building the models, maintaining them, tracking the changes. But of course, there was still quite a lot of, let's call it manual effort in deciding which vault you wanted to build, analyzing the changes that were happening on the vault, and also subsequently to on top of the vault, assessing the impact of changes, or just analyzing the data products that you wanted to build on top of the vault in the first place. So we've been talking with customers quite a lot. And then, of course, on the eve of agentic AI, let's say 2 years ago, we obviously started, I think like a lot of folks did, thinking around, why can't we just generate all this code using AI, using large language models? We tried, it works quite well, but it's actually not really the point where our customers wanted us to focus. So they were like, we're happy with the code generator that you have. It's deterministic, it's clear. What we would rather have you focus on is that phase that becomes before you generate the vault code, like which vault do I want to build, the analysis part of that. And then subsequently, once you have the data vault, how do I get the data presented in the way my data product or my business user requires to have it in a data product. So what we decided to build on top of the Vault automator that we've always had is what we call a context store. You see it here on the slides, and that's really where we add a place where we can make all the context around how you've built, how you've analyzed your sources, your data vault model, everything that comes with it, how you can make that available to the entire organization. And of course, also important in this day and age, how you can make it machine readable, like readable for agents to capture all the metadata and to also understand the versioning of all that metadata, right? So that's the idea of a context store. It's really like a living brain, living memory around everything you've built, every analysis, every design you've built around the data platform. Of course, with that data vault, that can still be very important in the middle. But it's not, you still need to generate code, right? There's several ways to generate code. VaultSpeed has a code generator, AutomateDV is a code generator as well. We believe at this point that it's still quite interesting to not have an LLM in the code path for generating Vault code. I mean, there's plenty of code generators out there, AutomateDV being a very good one. So what I'm gonna show in the demo is a bit how we bring that to life in the platform. So this is a bit more detail around the platform that we've built, right? And it comes with 3 important parts, okay? And I'll show you once I go into demo mode what the VaultSpeed UI looked like and still looks like today. But this is the layer that we added on top or alongside, let's say, to help with the analysis of the data vault that you want to build, that you want to achieve. So there's three main components to this toolbox. The first one is just it's a Git workspace, right? A Git workspace that in the first place helps you to organize around everything that you've built, right? All the data models, all the codes, all the documents or analyses that you built or generated using this agentic platform are stored in there, right? Versions using Git. Doesn't have to be GitHub, by the way. It can be any other flavor of Git. But that's the first thing it's primarily there to do. Another thing is that every customer, of course, gets their own workspace in this, or they can add multiple workspaces or add their own Git repositories as they want. Maybe a DBT repository, local or DBT cloud, doesn't matter. What you can also add on top of it is what we call, or what you get on top of it are platform skills. So skills that we as a platform provide to help you, for example, with things like creating a new skill. I'll show you the skill that I created for the connector between VaultSpeed and AutomateDV. I'll show you that in a minute, what that looks like. But also things like security, connecting to all your database, scheduling, all these things that you would expect an agentic data engineering platform to have, right? Now, the cool thing is that it doesn't stop there, right? So you will also have some skills available that are more into how do you model data vault? How do you use some skills to build out conceptual data models to get started in your whole data vault modeling journey? So all of that we have made available on a skill marketplace. But the cool thing is that you can also use this platform to build your own. So I guess many of you who have been playing around, trying with AI to get some things done in the world of data engineering and data management, you've all played with the concept of building skills and organizing yourself around that. So you can build your own skills inside this platform, right? And that's a totally new thing. So if you want to do something different than Data Vault, or you want to give it a different flavor that maps more to the way you would like to do it, you can take a skill from the marketplace and adapt it to your own needs, for example, or start from scratch. So it's really an open invitation on that front. The second thing that we added to master all of this context are two types of memory. I would say short-term and long-term memory, both equally important. And the way I like to explain it is, let's say that you have a conversation between colleagues on a certain thing that you certain thing you want to achieve as a team, right? For example, build a DBT project with AutomateDV and VaultSpeed around Data Vault. Then when you interact with your colleagues, you go to their desk or you open a Slack or a Teams message and you start chatting. That's like live context that you share amongst colleagues. So try to imagine that you bring agents into this conversation. That's when you need some kind of orchestration on how to share the context that you are working with between humans, agents, multiple team members. So that's what we call let's say the short-term memory. Yeah? Us talking around the stuff that we are building. And then secondly, you also need some kind of long-term memory. So all of the artifacts that you've built, all the code, all the data models, the analysis, besides having the outputs of that delivered into a Git workspace, we also have this context store that kind of versions the entire thing as to the metadata part of it. So the conceptual data model that we created, that's something we store in the business layer of this context store, right? And you can feed it with a skill set or a bunch of skill sets that you can get from the marketplace or that you can build yourself to build out that conceptual model based on conversation, based on files, inputs, alts, imports from XMI formats that you have somewhere lying around, or just pictures of an existing conversation. All of that can be used to import the context of how your business works into our context store. The second part of that is the implementation layer. I know it's architecture, bronze, silver, gold, but I think by now everyone gets the picture of what that does. Ingestion layer, silver layer is typically where you would position, for example, a data vault, could be a 3NF as well. And then the gold layer is where you would say, hey, this is where you do a star schema using bits bridges out of a data vault, build a star schema, and maybe a semantic layer on top, which is, sometimes people already talk about gold and then platinum for semantic layer. So that's also something you could feed into this context store as to how you implement it in your data platform. And then finally, a data product layer. We don't build data platforms for fun. Well, not only for fun, we also want to serve a whole business community that needs these data products. So how can we bring the context and the analysis of which data product do I want to build? And how does that map to what I have implemented? How does that map to my business model? That's something you also need to bring into this equation. So Git workspace, orchestration between agents and humans, and then a context store to really be the long-term memory, machine-readable memory also of what you have inside your data platform. So the loop that we have started building between VaultSpeed and AutomateDV around a year ago still hasn't changed, right? So the first thing we always do at VaultSpeed when you start out a data vault project is you need to design the data vault you want to build. You need to be able to govern it over time. So that is something that you cover inside VaultSpeed. The second part of it is, you need to capture all the metadata to make that happen. So the metadata of the sources you want to onboard in your data platform, it's very important that VaultSpeed understands them. And again, that we also understand how these sources evolve so that we can plot solutions on how your data vault model needs to evolve as well. And then you need to, if you've done that, you designed your data vaults, you have all the metadata, it's versioned, you can go from one version to the next, then you need to find a solution on how to generate codes for that. And that is in this case where AutomateDV comes in. So we kind of hand over the whole metadata setup. You select basically the right version of the vault you want to generate, and you generate it through the code patterns that AutomateDV delivers for dbt. Could be in dbt core, could be in dbt cloud, could be in Snowflake, native dbt, it can be anything. The point is that none of that code you would have to build manually, right? It's all out there, it's all delivered for you. And then another thing, of course, is once you generate it, you deploy, you run. But also down the road, you need to be able to trace and govern. So what is the lineage of a certain data flow? Which sources am I getting this data from, or feeding this data into the system? For auditability, traceability, all these things are important as well, right? So that flow hasn't changed. What I'm going to show you, it's maybe just the form factor of how these things work together that will have changed dramatically. Next slide, please, Alex. All right. Where does this help, right? Of course, if you start automating things, it's really about reducing, not only reducing manual effort, because I think that's one of the side benefits maybe, but a lot of what automation brings you is that standardization, auditability, and the fact that you can be confident around a certain change in a source or something not necessarily breaking your entire data flow or your data outputs, right? So an example of that is from a context store. If you have a certain source system that is telling you, hey, by next week, Friday, we are going to push a new release of our data model live. Are you able to bring that to live by then or not? You can run an impact analysis of the context store and understand what it is doing. Documentation, everything that you start building up into our context store is really documented on the fly, right? You can ask it to be written into Confluence, kind of build an integration between it. That's a skill you could build yourself on the platform, or into PDFs or MD files or presentations, whatever format you want. If it's in that context store, which is a knowledge graph, you can use agents to produce any kind of format around how you want to read that as documented content, right? And then finally, since it's versioned, tracked, there is always a full audit trail. So if you're an institution that is highly regulated, and you get an audit from time to time, and someone wants to know, well, this report, I want to know the basis on which it was built and produced, you can always trail back as to the data platform that was living at that point in time to confidently say, yeah, this is where we got it and this is how it was put together. So that is also something that you get out of the box. So let me briefly show you guys what we have, a bit of a recap of the previous session. So in VaultSpeed, this is VaultSpeed Core, a solution that is tailored and built around data vault modeling. What I have here is a conceptual model of, I'm using a manufacturing demo model for this demo today. So what we have here is a model of a manufacturer. So you have some items, you have bill of material, consumption of material. All these things could be modeled out conceptually. You could onboard sources like ERP systems, warehouse management, MES. So in a manufacturing context, all of this makes sense, but it works in any context, right? It's a foundational problem. So if you're a bank or if you're an insurer or whatever, yeah, what changes is the nature of these source systems, but the problem itself, it's the same problem that we solve. Now, ultimately, if you did enough modeling in VaultSpeed, or if you do enough modeling with VaultSpeed, you get to a point where you have a data vault model that looks a little bit like this. The thing is, and that's the big change that I want to show you, is how do you analyze all of this? There's a lot of analysis that is embedded, source analysis, understanding the data, understanding the metadata, understanding the model, understanding the process of how these models change, and also a lot of understanding around how you optimally model certain patterns into data vault itself, right? So with that, we went to work and we built, we call it Butterfly, because it's a bit of a transformation, let's say, not a full transformation, but it's really one of the new form factors whom you can, in which you can consume VaultSpeed and in which you can consume, for example, the data vault automator that we have built, and also how you can integrate quite nicely with solutions like AutomateDV. So one more time to go back. The previous solution we had built between VaultSpeed and AutomateDV was basically built on either the API of VaultSpeed to kind of harvest the solution of the data model that we had built. Like, oops, let me go back here. This one. So all of this is metadata, right? So we could pull that from the API of VaultSpeed to understand how this vault was constructed. And then with a little application that we built in between VaultSpeed's API and the API of AutomateDV, we could then say, okay, generate me the data vault for this. We had built a small rudimentary user interface around it that would generate the code under the hood and then push it into your GitHub repository, for example. Now, the process of this is still very, very valid. So you would use the API of VaultSpeed to get the data vault metadata. You would still use the API of AutomateDV to push it in and to prepare it towards code generation. But the little screen that you saw in the screenshot, that has changed a little bit. So basically what I did instead is, this is our new agentic platform where you see basically three things, right? These are all the sessions that I have been working on. For example, the session I'm in here, this is the one I've been working in for our little demo here. So that's sessions. This is a chat where you can just talk to your agent and where it will do anything. By the way, these sessions can be shared as well. So if you want to share it with a colleague, like in this case, Mardiros or Simon, you can copy the link, send it through them via Slack or Teams, and they would be able to work with me in this same session, right? And then finally, on the right-hand side, you have the access to what we showed on the slide also, your GitHub workspace or Git workspace in general, where you have everything that lives inside your workspace, okay? For example, some of the skills that I've built, and this one in particular, the skill that basically reproduced what we used to do in our little UX UI that we built between VaultSpeed and AutomateDV that now lives in a skill on top of this agentic platform. So I can open the skill MD, VaultSpeed core to AutomateDV, and it would do all the steps that the previous solution was doing as well. So there was a lot of code, Python code, to make these two APIs talk together, a lot of mapping of the metadata that had to be staged in a certain way to make it readable for the AutomateDV API. So all of that knowledge was now embedded into this skill. And I can basically run this from an agent instead of running it from a pre-canned application. I'll show you as well what it would look like, because I already generated a few things beforehand. For example, my satellites here, these are all the configs that I had to do, but it's basically still AutomateDV generated code that is being fed from the VaultSpeed UX UI in order to generate me what I need so that I can deploy it and do a DBT run in my DBT core, DBT cloud, whichever I have. Let me do a small update. So you might have noticed that in this count here of what I have inside this DBT project, I have 9 hubs and 7 satellites. That's because I purposefully deleted 2 of them. So I would now like to demonstrate that. Let's imagine you have a new satellite that needs to be generated because you have a new source or whatsoever. So can you please regenerate? Don't watch my typos, please. The automate DV mappings using the VaultSpeed to AutomateDV skill. I think I'm missing 2 satellites. So I'm asking my agent, hey, there's something for you to do. And it will read from the context store the entire thing that we have seen. So it's spotted, yeah, you're right, there's 2 additional satellites that are not there because you removed them. So let me just use the package to regenerate them and create them on the fly. And then it's using the actual skill, the one that I built on top of our previous integration, and that is now running from within this agentic platform. Underneath, I'm using, by the way, a Cloud Haiku model. So you don't need to use frontier models like Fable or Opus or whatever to get this done. It's just, it's good enough if you run it on a smaller model. There's different ways of configuring this. You can bring your own models. You could do it with local models, depending on how you want to get set up. But that's basically the setup of how everything can now work. By the way, on the fly, based on what it needs to do and organize, it will spin up agents and sub-agents that execute certain things for you. So that's part of that agentic platform as well. And what you can see is that, well, we regenerated the configuration for all the hubs. They were still there, but I have 2 more additional satellites now. The one that I had previously purposefully deleted. And there, if I go back here, they should also be available in my my Git repo. All right. So that's a bit the new way of consuming VaultSpeed, configuring the Vault Automator through AutomateDV, using all of the metadata that was built inside VaultSpeed. And by the way, you can use this for almost anything, right? You can use it to show business models or visualize diagrams. This is my business model of the same demo, the manufacturing demo. You could do it in a mermaid. We're working on a more on a better way to visualize these business models as we speak. Also the lineage, everything that you want to understand around how the data flows from left to right, let's say, can also be harvested and documented straight from the context store. So it's really, you use agents, you work together with your team of us humans and also the agents to get stuff done in terms of engineering. And if part of that is building your Vault using AutomateDV, well, then that's just what you can do with this. Some key takeaways before we go into Q&A. All of the metadata is now inside a context store. So it's not a spreadsheet or it's really something that an agent can read quite well. The knowledge graph underneath is something that an agent will eat for breakfast. And as humans, we can also consume it in any format we like through the agentic experience. It's AutomateDV that generates the code. In this case, I created a skill. I explained it how you turn VaultSpeed governed metadata for a certain version of the data vault pattern into AutomateDV codes using a skill. And the skill basically does, or the skill enables the agent to do all the work and generate the code for you. And then once it's there, you can still, it was gitted in your repo. So if you pull that Git repo into a dbt cloud or core environment, you can just run the dbt codes as you were running it before.
Reach out to us directly with the contact details at the bottom there. So George was saying, building as fast as possible should never have been the top priority for any IT org. Addressing governance as well as data enterprise traceability is just as important as speed delivery. And I was saying, I completely agree. In reality, this is what a lot of the businesses were doing. They were just trying to go as fast as possible, and they were missing the governance because it was too hard, or because they felt it slowed them down, or they wanted to focus on the other things they felt were higher priority. So I think what I was saying is, whilst it definitely should have been, it wasn't for everyone. It wasn't high priority, or not every company was able to do it. So this is what tools like VaultSpeed are trying to solve, and what we're trying to solve is making it less mental load to do the governance, and making it not a second thought and not something that has to be deprioritized. Would you agree there, Jonas?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially in this day and age, it's not really about speed anymore. It's even more about accuracy and governance and understanding really what you're doing. Because if we don't understand it as humans, there is no chance that an agent is going to do a better job at it. Maybe for some tasks, but in building a platform that kind of does what we want it to do, I think that's level of understanding what it does, what the platform is supposed to do, and what we want to get out of it in terms of day-to-day value for users, business users. Then speed is a solved problem. It's really about understanding what you've built and how you want to maintain that.
Yeah. How do we do it fast and consistently and properly to a good standard at scale? Can I include non-data thingies? I like the technical term in impact analysis, such as affected business functions, processes, related requirements, regulatory needs, that kind of thing. I guess that's a question for you, Jonas.
Yeah. So non-data thingy, the affected business. Yeah, that's the thing. Because of the fact that we added, it's more than just the life cycle of the Vault and some of the stuff you've built on top of the Vault alone. So a context store like this can store a lot more context as the metadata store that we had before. So indeed, if you have in the terms of impact analysis, the understanding of which business process or function or dependencies do we have downstream, maybe even the people who run it. We have a direct, or it's become actually very, very easy to integrate these things with solutions like governance solutions like a Colibra or Elation or Atlan or whatever you're using, or some of the native capabilities of some data platforms today. So if you link that to, I don't know, the business steward who manages a certain domain, that then knows or is kept in the loop of the fact that there's been a change on the source. If we don't make a decision this or that way, then it's going to break this report. So what do you want to do with that? That can be included. If you the thing is, if you import the context into the context store, it is able to answer these kind of questions as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's, from my understanding of it, right, it absorbs as much information as it can. It's like a big giant sponge, right? And so anything that can be context can be provided to it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of building out that understanding of what do we have in the platform, who is it serving. So bringing together much more information than just what we needed to generate the code before. And that's because, the bigger picture, and it's what you also need to be able to store if you want to be able to do these analyses on what is the data platform that we actually want to build. It's also something we added that you can build any skill on top of this thing. So let's say tomorrow someone wants to build a skill to produce, I don't know, a star schema or some certain strategy of building a star schema the way you like to do it. That's like something you could easily build right now. There's no one telling you what or what not to do. It's not, I mean, in the world of how we delivered solutions in data before, sometimes it was a bit more prescriptive. You had to do it like this or like that. And that was primarily to make some of the point and click modeling interfaces able to cope with these problems. Those days are gone. You can build any kind of the interface is language, right, or code, or you throw in whatever you want. Have an agent that assists you in analyzing all of that, and then move forward. We're working on projects right now where people didn't really have a well thought of strategy on how to set up their architecture. So I would call it sometimes the skip the silver layer or things like that. We can easily try to understand, like, okay, what's the source systems, what do they look like, but also what is the business logic that they have implemented right now, and how can we kind of use all of that information to rapidly, and I mean really in a matter of days, weeks, rapidly build out the structures they would need to properly set this up with an architecture medallion or any other type that you want to use, and just build. That's the cool thing about agentic AI. It allows us to solve some of the problems that automation tools were not able to solve before in the let's call it the pre-agentic era.
The dark ages.
Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah, let's see where it goes.
Like that.
Okay, great. So another follow-on question from George. Thank you, George. Let's keep on coming. These are great. So does the context store support versioning, perhaps recognizing that different releases of a data product are related to different versions of a concept?
Yeah, that's the point. So it needs to understand this versioning. And of course, you will say, it's a knowledge graph. We kind of did it in a way so that the knowledge graph is managed, right? Because if you just start throwing context in a knowledge graph, the first thing you will get, if you don't pay attention, is entropy. So it's really hardened. You can't just start using your own implementation of how you would store that into the graph. That is the one thing that is hardened a little bit to make sure that it can be versioned, that it can be managed in a certain way. So the context store is really a part of the platform that we manage a bit for you on how to store and gather all this context. It's under continuous development as well. So if we see any use cases where we should add a few things left or right, we will obviously do that. That's what we will provide as a platform vendor. But actually how you fill it or how you explore it, that's entirely up to you, because you can build any skill on top as you please. That's the idea. But versioning is one of the things that is an inherent part of organizing your context in this way.
Makes sense. Okay. There's one further question under that, which was, can you import or export concept models and business models?
Yeah. Can do a simple yes, maybe. So importing business models. I'm looking at where to find this name. So if you have a conceptual model in solutions like an Irwin, or if you're used to doing it in there, please keep on doing that. But we can definitely import that context. And obviously, since we can import it, you can also export it quite easily. There are a few export formats available out of the box, but if you build a skill to maybe push it back to your preferred modeler or visualizer or what have you, you can easily do so.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so there's one question here. How do I reconcile data vault modeling and data as a product thinking? How do I catalog a data vault model and Lineage in a way that is understandable by a business domain data steward?
My idea is that what I've seen sometimes with people doing, customers doing data vaults is that I've seen a hard kind of sometimes data mesh approach where they really wanted to isolate it for every single data product. And that doesn't necessarily fly that well if you really want to adopt a data vault methodology. So in a data vault setup, the line of thinking, or in that line of thinking, it's in my opinion, but again, open to anything, I think it's better to centralize a bit what you're doing in the vault based on the way the business model of the organization or of the particular entity within the organization, how it operates. Design a data vault according to that. Really build speed in how you onboard certain systems with data that everybody within the organization uses, how you onboard them into that silver layer, and then separate a bit more the data as a product or data products flows from there, because they can all reuse the same building blocks that you have inside the vault. So I would say if you kind of have a bit more, if you have the pendulum between centralized and decentralized, I'm not saying it should be all the way to the left or all the way to the right in any layer, but a bit more towards a centralized model in the vault in the silver layer to kind of present an important data set of data that is useful for everyone to the people who build out the data products. And there you can do basically whatever you want. So there it's way more decentralized. That's what I've seen working best, but could be anything else.
Yeah, I guess just to add my bit, it really, I hate to give the it depends answer, but it really depends on the, I guess the scale, how how many overlapping domains you might have, how much reuse there is. Sometimes a core team makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. Generally, the product is what comes out in the gold layer, but there will be shared components between products where you need to centralize those things potentially. So yeah, I think otherwise, I think it makes sense what you're saying.
Yeah, I fully agree, Alex. So it's it depends largely on the amount of overlap. If you have zero overlap, then you can perfectly decide to completely isolate the two streams. Because if you do decide to centralize a bit, you also need to share the governance, and that can complicate things. So if there's no overlap, by all means, keep it separate. But in many cases, there is. So it's really providing data for a larger group to use. Then you can gain a lot of economies of scale or scope by centralizing a bit, not necessarily all, but like say the important bit of your silver layers. And actually, if you decide then to still have a separate vault that attaches onto the main one, let's say, for a certain domain, that would also still work, because the vault model is a very extendable model as that's the way the methodology works. So
yeah, sure. I think we did have a previous speaker that talked about data mesh, data vault, kind of how they work together. Maybe while we're talking, I'll see if I can find a link to that video, and we can I can send that to you. I think it explores it in a lot more detail. It's a really good watch.